doing something that few people do, and there's a reason for it, because it's really hard on you, physically and mentally. But once you get your legs under you and your feet and you're good, then it's like, okay, how long can you eat ramen and sleep on the ground? And that's the mental part of it that I think is what a lot of people aren't sure they're able to do. Some people can go a weekend, some people can go a month, some people can do a complete through hike, but you don't know until you're out there. And after a while, you start to just kind of miss having the creature comforts that you take for granted, because what you're doing is you're going without. And after a while, not having just a shower or a toilet or a bed, it starts to wear on you. And I think that's probably why, most people will quit a through hike. They never say it. They never say they quit. They always say stuff like, well, I got what I wanted out of it, or, it wasn't my year. Or they say stuff like, I have other projects I want to do. It's like, no. Be honest. This is one of the hardest things that a person can do. And it was too hard for you, and you fucking quit. So just say that. Just be honest about it. And you never hear that. It's so funny. There's always some other excuse. And so yeah, but that's the thing, is that just every time, like it cracks me up, but and I think it's okay to say that you quit. It's okay to say that it was too hard, but it's one of those things. So you don't you're not going to know how you're going to handle it mentally until you're out there for a while, and you're beating yourself up. I mean, I went from Steamboat Springs, Colorado to Kearney, Arizona without doing laundry. It was like 2,000 miles or something. I would do laundry like in the shower with me, but I didn't want to ever take the time to like sit and wait for the washer and dryer to go, and I didn't know where those laundromats were going to be, so I would just clean all my stuff in the shower. But those are like the things that I would have to sacrifice to get it done, and I don't think a lot of people would be willing to do that.
Broadcasting from the Woodpeckers studio in the great state of New Hampshire, welcome to the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast, where we discuss all things related to hiking and search and rescue in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Here are your hosts.
Yeah, well, we're going to start from the top, so just pretend like this is the first time you've ever said anything, Chezwick. So, Chezwick, welcome back.
So, just so everybody knows, we've been recording, or at least I've been recording for a few minutes, but Mike forgot to press record. So, what we've been talking about is Mike's upcoming Winter Beginner 101 hike coming up here on, what is it, Hiking Buddies?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and you're stressing about it.
I'm stressing, but it's also, Chezwick, I feel like it's probably better that we didn't include my comparison to you looking like an Afghan prisoner after you finished your Great Western Loop. So.
Right. So yeah, just take them up Mount Willard.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm hosting this buddy hike stomp, and the whole deal is that it's for people that haven't done a lot of winter hiking, or they just have to get more experience. So in my mind, I have this idea that like anybody that has questions about gear or what to do, like we can sort of plan it ahead of time, because it's not until January 14th, and then people will hopefully feel comfortable and they won't feel too stressed about like meeting a certain pace or whatever, because it's Mount Pierce. So we go up Crawford and we'll just, take it slow. But 25 people signed up for this thing. So you can't hike with 25 people. So Julie, who's one of the admins from the Hiking Buddies, she had offered to, split the group up. So I'm sure like a bunch of people will drop out. But, we'll have 10 people or less in the groups, and we'll stagger the time or whatever, and maybe take different routes. But yeah, Stompy, if you can help out, that'd be great.
Yeah, no problem at all. So this is a question I have about that. So is the 10 limit a Hiking Buddy limit, or is it the U.S. Forest Service limit? I could not remember if there was like a suggested limit to group size when you're hiking.
So I think the limit is only 10 or less when you're in a wilderness area. So technically, you could take like a Boy Scout troop up Crawford Path, I think, and like there's no issue there. I think from just my own personal situation, like I don't want to be up there with like 20 people, like 10. Yeah, I hike solo most of the time, so I can't even, like Chezwick's just horrified thinking about this. Like he's been basically solo hiking for 7,000 miles here. So, but
yeah, that whole thing you're about to do, it sounds like a search and rescue.
It does. Yeah, it could be.
It's so good.
Yeah. But it'll be fun, and I'm looking forward to it. I feel like it's gonna be some good material and good experience for us. But I'm definitely not like a hiking guide or anything like that. So I'll do my best to engage. Right. But let's see.
Good luck.
January 14th.
I'll be there.
It'll be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Stomp, just a couple things before we get to Chezwick. Some of the road closures are starting, so I think I saw. I think Ken McGray had posted some stuff on the 52 with the View site, but there's Bear Notch Road is closed now. Zealand is closed, and then I think Hurricane Mountain Road is closed, which that makes sense, and then Evans Notch is closed. But I think Evans Notch is closed more for them doing construction than it is for the weather at this point, although I'm sure that factors into it as well. So it's getting real.
Any word on Tripoli?
Nothing yet. The latest update that I saw was that there was 4 roads closed only. So I saw somebody posted from Nash Stream over the weekend. They said that was still open too.
Interesting, because I was in Waterville the last few days, and it was snowing 24/7 up there, and it's icy, and just the sloppy stuff coming in now. It's a whole different world up there. So I bet that's going to close very, very soon.
Yeah, I would think this week as well. So
yeah,
get ready for the longer walks. If you're doing like Garfield, or if you're going to do any of the Zealand hikes or anything like that, you're going to be in for an extra couple of miles.
Yes, absolutely.
Stomp, you said you have a message from a listener.
Yeah, this is actually really nice. So this is a nice note from @MountainGem, NTNJEM. She writes, the other day I rolled my ankle coming off of Champney Falls Trail on Chicora, about 2 miles from the trailhead. I laid there thinking of all the different ways I could wrap my ankle, given the supplies I have, all the things I learned from your podcast, and my experience working in orthopedics. I also thought of a recent SAR story you shared from Chicora. I worked up the courage and hobbled my way out using a pole and my boyfriend by my side. Compression socks is something I will always wear when hiking from now on. It helped keep the swelling down on my ankle. So, nice little note from a listener. We're glad you got out okay, and thanks for listening, and pretty cool. It's always great if you can self-extricate yourself and just make sure you have the stuff you need to pull that off, because otherwise you're going to be waiting for search and rescue for quite some time. And in the cold weather coming up, not a good situation.
Yeah, and over in there, like Champney Falls, like, so you have no cell connection until you get down to the bottom of Route 16. So basically, like if you're in that situation like she was in, it's pick your poison. Like either you send your boyfriend out to drive down to Conway to get to a cell connection to call for help, or you guys kind of struggle along together to get out, which to me, I pick the struggle along together to get out every time versus like separating. She certainly wasn't going to want to be there by herself, like dragging herself out of there while her boyfriend's rushing to get a cell connection.
Interesting. Hey, did you hear that Eric Todd Sweet hit his 100th ascent on the rock pile?
I did. I saw a couple. Yeah. I think Lynn had put together some video and stuff like that. So congratulations, Eric.
Yeah. So this guy's been hitting. I don't know if it's exclusively the cog, but generally the cog up to the summit, and he hit 100. And there was a talk about group size. Yeah, that had to be like 20 or 30 people.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah. Congrats, Eric. That's super cool.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it inspired me to take a look at how many times I've hiked Mount Washington, and I was able to find 18 and I included like the road races as well. So there's probably a little bit more, but now it got me kind of thinking. But who knows?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
Awesome. All right, Stomp. And then next thing we got here, you had put together a video of Alex Harnold doing some hiking. I think he was near Half Dome or something like that. But it was a pretty cool video that we'll link in the show notes, where he was talking sort of about his mindset on free solos with another guy named Magnus, I think. And it was pretty interesting just hearing them kind of talk climbing together.
Yeah. So it's the Thank God ledge on Half Dome, which is like 19 pitches up. And this is a person that tries to do what Alex did, and I guess in the community, to do a Harnold is to stand up and turn around on that ledge. And it just gives you a sense of how difficult that is as a technical climber, with all the gear and all the anchors and the roping and everything else. And then tying into the Magnus is an amazing climber. He free solos with Alex at a different location, and it's a neat video because it's very intimate. It's just the two of them. Alex is actually just filming the whole thing as they're free soloing up this route, and this guy Magnus is like, holy shit. Like, it's just a really interesting thing because they're talking the whole time, and they're sort of decompressing and talking about the risk and the narrow margin for error. So check it out. It's a great watch. It's fascinating.
Yeah, that's the video that I saw. So it was pretty interesting just watching them sort of talk shop. But I do wonder, is this guy Harnold, I follow his wife on Instagram. I see his wife more than him, she's better to look at anyway. But he's got like 1 or 2 kids now, so I got to imagine like he...
Oh, yeah. He's toning it down.
Oh, I would imagine he would have to.
Except for this this thing with Magnus.
Yeah. I know, like, I remember the video that made him famous, like, there was already tension between him and she was his girlfriend at the time around, him doing this stuff. He wasn't ready to give it up, but I think that she was ready to sort of take off if he wouldn't stop doing crazy stuff,
Yeah, for sure. Right. And lastly here, we have just snow updates. Like Utah got like 60 inches, where tonight I think New York is about to get like 2 to 4 feet of snow. So they're actually closing down some of the highways from big rigs and things like that. So I'm hearing murmurs that this is going to be a great season. And Ches and I were talking about snowmobile guiding coming up soon, and we're just revved up. So fingers crossed. Think snow.
Yeah, Buffalo's got 4 feet coming in off of Lake Effects, which would be great.
Crazy. Yeah, it's fantastic. Hey, we have some donations. We'll just zip through it quick. Somebody donated 2. Most of these are birthday wishes, and I have to say thank you very much. And I'm not 54. I'm actually 53, so I don't know where that one came from.
Did you forget? I forget how old I am sometimes. Do you forget?
Oh, me too. Yeah. Oh, hell yeah. But sometimes I feel like I'm 54. So we have donations from someone, Shandy, James Landoli, Jeff, Bobby OC23 donated, and then this one came in tonight. Paul, this dude donated 20 coffees, and he writes, Fugaki, happy birthday wishes. So I'm thinking, like, what's somebody like, spying on me or something? I don't know where that one came from, but it's a mystery donation from Paul. Say hi next time. Jeez.
Yeah. All right, so welcome to no nonsense tonight. We're getting right to Chezwick and stuff. You got to turn the show around. Like, are you turning this around tonight? We're going to get it out Friday morning, or are we doing a delayed?
Oh, hell yeah!
So you're staying up late tonight?
I'm going to stay up and put it all together. Should be pretty simple though.
All right. Well, welcome to episode 83. I am going to keep track of the age of the show here correctly. So episode 83 of the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast. This week we welcome back Nick Chezwick. Is it Gagnon or Gagnon? How do you say your last name?
Yeah, I mean, in Canada it's Gagnon. In the States it's Gagnon. And it doesn't really matter.
Close enough. So Nick Chezwick is here. So Chezwick just became what I believe is the 3rd person to successfully complete a documented hike of the Great Western Loop. So we first spoke with Chezwick back in March in episode 50, and at the time he was planning his second attempt on the Great Western Loop. He had made it like 5,000 miles last time, had gotten an injury, so he wanted to go back and finish it up. So this trail covers a number of long trails, as well as some sections of, I think, open desert and mountains. So some of the familiar sections that people may be aware of is the Pacific Crest Trail, the Pacific Northwest Trail, the Continental Divide, and then it also connects to sections called the Grand Enchantment and the Arizona Trail. So this is an insane hike. 9 states, 12 national parks, more than 75 wilderness areas. All told, Chezwick covered close to 7,000 miles in a little under 200 days. So sit back, grab a beer, and we're going to chat with Chezwick so that he can bring us along in his journey, and we'll learn about this amazing accomplishment. So I'm Mike.
And I'm Stomp. Let's get started.
Yeah, definitely. I want to hear all about this. But before we go into the details, we're talking a little bit of beer here. Stomp, you got anything?
Yeah, I'm having a Burlington Beer Works Wizard, which is a double IPA and comes in at a whopping 8%. I was going to bring a different one that they make, and it's called Castle of the Clouds, and nice. Or In the Clouds. So yeah, what do you got? Anything?
I got a Stoneface Brewing IPA, and actually earlier today I did have another Fieldstone Kombucha. I had the original tea flavor, which was pretty good too. So I'm trying to stay healthy and then also drink beer.
There you go. Excellent.
In Chezwick, I feel like you don't drink, but am I right about that?
I don't when I'm hiking, usually. Just
got it.
And now with the surgery and everything, I'm kind of just laid up on the couch. So I might have to start back up again because I'm pretty bored just laying on a couch now after moving for almost 7 months straight. So this is a whole different world for me now. Sure. It's tough.
No kidding. It's hard. Must be driving you nuts.
I bet, yeah.
Well, I was just saying that, the time zone thing has really messed me up because, 3 hours behind on the West Coast. And when I was doing it, I was, up between 4 and 5 in the morning. So, now I'm falling asleep. I was supposed to be in bed right now, but I'm talking to you guys.
Oh, dude. Yeah, we got to cruise right along here. As for me personally, I just did a Grand Traverse. I was doing some trail cleaning, but we have some other folks here. Full Strength Coffee did a sunrise on Whiteface on Veterans Day just to reflect on that great day. Jackie hikes, first hike since last Veterans Day after a fracture, where she hobbled out of Monadnock. Nick hikes and plays guitar, did Mount Cube for 35 out of the 52 with a view. And also Mount Cube. Oh, yeah, no, sorry, that's a double. So Shandy did Kearsarge North for sunrise. Subi hikes 8 this weekend towards the Northeast 67. This dude did 8 hikes, including Abraham, Crockers, Bigelow's, Reddington, Spalding, Sugarloaf. Pretty impressive. So that's what we got for notable hikes. If you guys tag us, then we'll give you a prop, and we appreciate it. I think Subi Hikes probably gets that one for 8 hikes in a weekend.
yeah, that's pretty impressive. And I think Shandy had posted those pictures of the sunrise on Kearsarge North. That's always a fun one too.
Yeah, amazing. For sponsors, we have Fieldstone Kombucha, New England's premier craft kombucha, ships to New Hampshire. Check out Fieldstone Kombucha online for delicious seasonal flavors and a kombucha style beloved of skeptics and enthusiasts alike. The perfect non-alcoholic post-hike drink. Shipping available for retail and wholesale. Just get a hold of Emily Sheridan at emily@fieldstonekombucha.com or visit them at fieldstonekombuchaco.com. And of course, Spinner's Pizza for your refresh on the way home from your hike. It's the #1 pizza in Andover, Mass. Just off Dascombe Road 93. EMS, your Northeast go-to for outdoor gear guidance and education and more since 1967. Check them out at EMS.com. And lastly, at Reckless Brewing, where you'll enjoy the best food, craft beer, and fun just 15 minutes from the Franconia Notch. Many 4K footers and less than 10 minutes from the Five Corners. Boom.
SLASR's Guest of the Week. Very cool. Very cool. Very, 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 very cool.
All right, so on to you, Chezwick. So welcome back.
Yeah.
So you're getting some attention here. So just for the audience's sake, Outside Magazine just put together an awesome article about this completion of the Great Western Loop. So we'll link this in the show notes for sure. But Chezwick, why don't you just remind everybody a little bit about your background, your connection to New Hampshire? You know, but in the past we talked about sort of your exploits on Everest Base Camp, the Eastern Continental Trail, that whole deal. So if you want to just reintroduce yourself, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I grew up in Mount Washington Valley. Just basically been a bartender for the last 15 years. And yeah, it was the Everest Base Camp trek was 2008, and that was probably where I got, the hiking bug. And then I didn't really do much after that until I turned 29. And that's when I decided to do the Eastern Continental Trail. But that only happened just because of the timing. And, end of the year, I couldn't start the AT. So I came across the Florida Trail and was like, well, I wonder if you can link these two trails together. And that's when I came across the ECT. So it just happened to be that my first through hike was 4,800 miles. And so when I got that one done, I wasn't trying to do it fast. I was just trying to see if I could just accomplish a through hike. And it ended up taking me like 10 and a half months to do it. So I started in Miami on New Year's Eve, and I finished October 24th up in Gaspé, Quebec. So that was the first one. And then I think it was 2017, I attempted the PCT. But that was a really bad year. A lot of snow, a lot of fires. We had to go into the Sierras later because of all the snowpack. And then by the time we got into Northern California, all the fires had started. And so a lot of us were forced to jump around and flip-flop around. And I don't do that. I'm a continuous footpath person, like Mexico to Canada, Georgia to Maine or whatever. And so the only way for me, I feel, to legitimately do a through hike is to do a continuous footpath from one border to the next. And so I didn't feel like, now that I had to skip around in 2017, I kind of just chalked it up as, bad luck and whatever. And then, I had some injuries. I needed to do foot surgery and a knee surgery and a shoulder surgery. So I didn't hike for 4 years. And I was just thinking about, I want to do this Great Western Loop thing, and how great would it be to just accomplish it, just to be able to do it, because there's so many variables. It's so long. You have to force a pace of over 30 miles a day. I didn't know if I was capable of doing that at the time. So I just wanted to try and get it done. And when I made it to Colorado, just outside of Grand Lake, that's when I had stepped on a rock and I broke my foot. So about 4,800 miles in, and I went home, took my walking boot and my crutches, put those away after, I think, 3.5 weeks, and I flew back to Denver to try and finish. I knew I couldn't break 200 days at that point, but it was just so hard to leave that many miles on the table. 4,800 miles, 142 days, and you feel like you failed. So I wasn't able to get it done. Too much snow. My Achilles was inflamed. I pulled my calf muscle. So I went home, and the only option was to redo it, but I couldn't go back to where I broke my foot and finish the last 2,000 miles. The thing that makes the Great Western Loop so difficult and so rare to do is you have to do this thing within a calendar year. You don't do it in sections, because anyone can do the PCT and the PNT and just link it all. So the challenge is to get through the Sierras and get up to Canada, and then go east to Montana, and then go south and get through the San Juans before winter. And that 4,700 mile section forces this over 30 mile per day pace. So you're doing all this big high mountain stuff, through snowpack and river crossings, bushwhacking and blowdown and all that. And that's the difference between what this is and what the average through hike is, whether it's the AT, PCT, or CDT, is, you don't get to have a trail family. You don't get to take many rest days. You're forcing that pace no matter what the weather, no matter what the temperature, no matter what the conditions are. And a lot of times, because you're forcing a pace that's so aggressive, you can get into some trouble. And so luckily, I had a 4,800 mile practice run. So I knew the mistakes I made the first time, I was not going to make the second time. Different towns I wouldn't resupply in. I would go to other towns and I would do 5-day food carries versus 7 or 8, keep my pack weight down. And so all the gear was different. And so it was extremely difficult, but the only thing that I felt I could do was to do it all over again. And that sounds crazy to a lot of people, but it's the only thing that made sense at the time. So yeah, that's why I did it. And
got it. So then, if I understand this, so you had done the PCT on its own at one time, or attempted it, and then you did the Great Western Loop attempt for the 4,800, and then this year is when you went back and completed the whole thing. So can you just summarize sort of at a very high level? And I wanted to break this down by sections and then sort of talk a little bit about sort of the logistics of the hike in between, but can you summarize the trail overall? So it's obviously, there's the PCT, there's the Pacific Northwest, Continental Divide, Grand Enchantment, and Arizona Trails, but can you just, from your perspective, can you just describe it as you think of it?
Yeah, so I started in Nothing, Arizona, and that is a self-made segment. And so basically you just have to go through areas to make it to the PCT where you're going to find water sources, whether that's going to be a convenience store, whether that's going to be, just any place, because that section, the first attempt, was 92-mile waterless stretch. So I did a different route this time, which is a 74-mile waterless stretch. So 16 liters the first time, 11 and a half liters I think I carried the second time. So after 286, I think, miles, I made it to the mile 222 of the PCT. Now you do 500 miles of desert PCT hiking. And to me, I think that was probably the easiest section of this entire hike. Plenty of trail angels, plenty of places to resupply, water caches, well-marked, well-defined. So you get to Kennedy Meadows in the start of the Sierras, and you've just basically done the easiest part that you're going to encounter. From there, it was a lot of snowpack. So essentially from when I got into the Sierras to when I got off the PCT, I did about 1,500 miles of snowpack hiking. There were just late season storms in Oregon and Washington, and they had a cold spring. And so the snowpack level in Oregon was at 5,300 feet, and the snowpack level in Washington was at 4,500 feet, and the PCT usually runs at about 6,000. So when we were leaving a town or a road, we would basically be a mile in, and now we're in snowpack. And so that's a lot of post-holing and tripping and falling and breaking trekking poles and just slogging through this stuff. And not a lot of those sections up there are well marked, and you don't know where the trail is. It's like walking around the woods in February here. You're just going, and you don't really know where you're gonna, where it's gonna lead. And so you really rely on your phone and your GPS, because there's nothing to tell you which way you're going. You're kind of just wandering through the woods. So after going through the Sierras and after going through Oregon and Washington section, then you peel off and you go onto the Pacific Northwest Trail. And this is a newer trail in the world of through hikes. So it was linked with a lot of roads, and in the middle it's got a few mountain hiking sections, but it has like a 60-mile road walk, and it's got a 40-mile road walk. So because the pace got beat up in Oregon and Washington because of the snow, at the time I was hiking with a kid, and we can talk about Sloppy Joe later, but we knew we had to push big miles. So we carried a 32.5 average on the PCT, and then on the PNT we carried a 40-mile average. and that just leads you to Glacier National Park and to the CDT. And then from there, you basically are just trying to do the most miles that you can do the most honest way of the CDT, because it has so many options for routes. AT is one trail, PCT is one trail, CDT is there's probably, you can do that trail 15 to 20 different ways. And so you just got to make sure that the original guy that created this hike, Andrew Skirka, did 2,450 miles of the CDT. So I knew I had to at least hit that number. So I finished, I think, with 2476.6, and I tried to do as much of the mountainous sections. So I knew I had to hit Glacier, obviously. I had to do the San Juans, and I had to not do the Creed cutoff. You have to do the big horseshoe around, and you have to follow the San Juan section, the red line of the CDT. So there's a few hallmarks of this Great Western Loop that I feel need to be done. The Sierras, obviously, you want to do, and you want to do the San Juan Mountains, and those are the two checkpoints of the trail. And then from there, you're getting on the Grand Enchantment Trail. Now, this is a route. It's not a trail, even though that's what it's called. So there's no markings that are saying you're on the Grand Enchantment Trail. You're basically using existing trails and forest roads and paved roads and just bushwhacking routes through the desert to link this thing together. And it was the most difficult hiking, I think, some of the most difficult hiking I ever did in that section, because it's just covered in blowdowns.
Yeah, you didn't get to that section your first time around. So the first 5,000, you were good to go. This last section was where you didn't have the intel either to have been there before.
Right. Yeah, that last, and I mean, I did attempt to go back last year and finish, but I was way too late in the season. It already started to snow, and if I had tried to do that last year, I could have gotten seriously hurt or killed, because the San Juans are definitely not a section you want to be messing around in the late season. And then, yeah, you get into the Grand Enchantment in New Mexico and Arizona, and now your water sources that may have been good early in the season from the snowmelt, those are mostly dried up. So now your big concern is the navigation through the desert of the Grand Enchantment section, and then getting on the Arizona Trail and knowing that a lot of these water sources and water caches are going to be either empty or dry. So it goes from this whole focus of getting through the San Juans and doing this big pace over these big mountains to now focusing on your water and having enough water to get through the last part of it. And, then from the Grand Enchantment, you get onto the Arizona and you take the Arizona Trail north, and that brings you to the Grand Canyon. And then you go into the Grand Canyon and you take the Tonto Trail and the South Bass Trail, and it's a very zigzagged trail, the Tonto. It kind of runs right along the canyon, and it's looks like an earthquake needle. That's the way the trail is shaped. So as the crow flies, it's only probably 20 miles, but the way it's designed around these long canyon sections, it's probably 45 to 50. So once you get out of the canyon, then for me it was a 250 something mile road walk. Now, I could have gone from the Grand Canyon right back to nothing. I think it was 60 miles, just straight down. But I needed to do 6,875 miles. That's what Andrew Skirka said was the distance. And I couldn't say, well, I did the Great Western Loop in under 200 days if I didn't hit that number. So instead of going straight back to where I started, I actually went south more and down, and then went west and then back up north again to complete it and to do the total distance.
Got it. Wow. So just going back to the beginning of the hike, so you fly it in there, and then you're going to Nothing, Arizona. So that sounds like that's west of the Grand Canyon, and you're looking at a 70, 80 mile desert hike where you've got to carry all your water. When you start with the gear that you start with, how physically do you even carry 16 liters of water? How does that even work?
So the first pack that I used, it was a Superior Wilderness Designs pack, and it just had a lot of pockets. My buddy had it built. We were going to do the Patagonia Trail, and he ended up buying a boat and moving to Washington State. And so he got a speeding ticket, so I paid for the speeding ticket. He gave me the backpack. But it just happened to be this pack that could fit platy bags. So I had 6 2.5 liter platy bags, and I was able to put them in the outside pockets and fit them all around. And then I had, my smart water bottles on top of that. But the weight of water, is just, it's brutal. And what's very difficult about it to start on the loop is you haven't gotten your hiker legs. You haven't broken your body yet. And that usually takes anywhere from 2 weeks to a month. And so you have to do these big water carries with the heaviest pack you're ever going to have for this entire hike 4 to 5 days into this trail. And so, I was getting some shin splint pain and some knee pain from that. And, but that's more of what you want to deal with than running out of water. Because running out of water out there, it's one of the scariest things when you don't know when you're going to get it again.
We're going to talk about injuries and stuff, but it seems to me that the 2 points where you would be most prone to injury would be the beginning and then the last third of the adventure where you start experiencing overuse injuries. But the beginning is interesting too because you're not quite primed up for the vigor of what you're about to start.
Right. There's just certain things you have to be aware of. You can't push a pair of shoes because you don't want to spend the money. I would go 500 miles on a pair of shoes, even if they weren't completely blown out and they still had some life in them. I can't risk that because I'm doing such a vigorous pace. I'm averaging 250 miles a week. And so I would always make sure that my shoes were going to be where I needed them to be. Make sure that, I was just dressed in comfortable stuff. Everything is very specific, and it's very specific so that you give yourself the best chance for success. And so I've always had this idea that, I don't care what something costs. If I need it mentally, I'm going to get a steak dinner, or if I need a hotel stay, I'm going to get it. I don't care when and where that is. If I need it, I get that. And sometimes, you'd feel like, okay, maybe this is going to be a pain that might go away or it might not go away. Usually on these hikes, when you initially start them, there's going to be some pain in some part of your body that you didn't even think about. You've been so focused on something else, and then this thing shows up, and you're like, what the hell is this all about? But usually, once your body realizes what you're doing to it, which, like I said, is probably 2 weeks to a month, after that, it kind of is like, okay, so this is what we're doing now. But, you're doing something that few people do, and there's a reason for it because it's really hard on you, physically and mentally. But once you get your legs under you and your feet and you're good, then it's like, okay, how long can you eat ramen and sleep on the ground? And that's the mental part of it that I think is what a lot of people aren't sure they're able to do. Some people can go a weekend, some people can go a month. Some people can do a complete through hike, but you don't know until you're out there. And after a while, you start to just kind of miss having the creature comforts that you take for granted because what you're doing is you're going without. And after a while, not having just a shower or a toilet or a bed, it starts to wear on you. And I think that's probably why most people will quit a through hike. They never say it. They never say they quit. They always say stuff like, well, I got what I wanted out of it, or, it wasn't my year. Or they say stuff like, I have other projects I want to do. It's like, no. Be honest. This is one of the hardest things that a person can do. And it was too hard for you. Then you fucking quit. So just say that. Just be honest about it. And you never hear that. It's so funny. There's always some other excuse, And but that's the thing is that just every time, like it cracks me up. But and I think it's okay to say that you quit. It's okay to say that it was too hard. But it's one of those things. So you're not going to know how you're going to handle it mentally until you're out there for a while, and you're beating yourself up. I went from Steamboat Springs, Colorado to Kearney, Arizona without doing laundry. It was like 2,000 miles or something. I would do laundry like in the shower with me, but I didn't want to ever take the time to like sit and wait for the washer and dryer to go, and I didn't know where those laundromats were going to be, so I would just clean all my stuff in the shower. But, those are like the things that I would have to sacrifice to get it done. And I don't think a lot of people would be willing to do that.
Interesting. Now, is the start location that you picked, is that because Andrew Skirka is the guy that I think he was the first one that did this in 2007, and it sounds like you're sort of deferring to him on the high level rules of the route, but is it like specific that you have to start in that location in Arizona, or could you have started at the southern terminus and had an easier start?
Well, your start is so much about timing. So, you have to be weary that you're going to be going into the Sierras earlier than most hikers. And so you want to let that snowpack dissipate a little bit. But you can't go so late that you're going to be dealing with the forest fires of Northern California, because those are almost guaranteed now. And you also have to remember that you have to get north as quick as you can, and then over and then down through the San Juans before winter. So you're really up against it. So Skirka started in the Grand Canyon on April 9th. Jeff Garmeyer started in Blythe, California, on the border of Arizona on April 29th. So I figured I'd just start right in the middle of those two on April 19th. And that just happened to work out for timing. It was a crazy year for snow up in Oregon and Washington, but there's nothing you can do about that. When people are doing short hikes and they're setting FKTs, they're usually going to do, like the Deratissima would be something where you can look at, okay, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it in June. I'm going to pick the longest days of the year. I'm going to check a weather window. And if I don't get it done, well, it's, 240 miles, whatever. But they always try and make sure that they give themselves the best chance for success. Because this is so long, the only thing you can really control initially is that start date. And you just hope that you've picked a good spot and a good time. Because you're going whether you like it or not. And you're not taking rest days, and you can't go a couple thousand miles and say, oh, well, I couldn't get it done, so maybe I'll do it another time, So, yeah, the start of it is just important.
Does the timing of where you need to be dictate sort of because I feel like you approach this like this is business, like you're not
right.
doing the typical what you would see around through hikers where they're balancing between the hike and the social aspects of it. Like this is very much like I've got a mission and nothing's getting in the way of that. Is that just your personality, or is that just dictated by the reality of this loop that you can't afford not to be that way?
I think it's both, but I mean, you have to approach it like it is work, because my average for this whole thing, I think, was 34.8 miles per day. But to get to that, I had a lot of 40-plus mile days. I had 350s, I think. So you have to approach every single day like, alarm goes off at 4 a.m., you're on the trail at 5:30, and you've got to, so I would always try and get about 10 to 11 miles by 10 in the morning. So I could have like 16 to 18 by noon, which then I'd say about 25 from noon to 10. So I would hike from 5:30 in the morning to 10:30 at night. That was basically my start and my finish, with an hour and a half worth of breaks. So the only way to do this is to go at it knowing that you're doing big miles every single day. So yeah, I mean, I hiked with one kid we did about 1,000 miles together because we were both going for the loop. And, but other than that, I think I hiked with, about 5 other people. We just happened to be going the same direction. And, one kid was 2 days, one person was 1 day. But other than that, once I left the CDT, and even before that, because what happens when you're doing a pace like this is you're going to get to the hiker bubble where everyone's doing 15 to 20 mile days, and you're going to get through that, and then you're going to be so far north that you're not going to see anyone anymore. And then I'll go through the hiker bubble of the PNT, and then going south in the CDT, I'll catch the southbounders, and then once I get past them, now I'm really out there. I mean, I didn't see any hikers probably from about halfway through Colorado to the Arizona Trail. I didn't see anybody on the Grand Enchantment section, you know. And if something had happened for me out there, it would have been really bad, because you're so remote and you're dealing with so many things that it was crazy. You know, you're just going for days. The only people you're going to see are people that will pull over on the side of the road, ask you if you're okay, or talking to a clerk at a convenience store. And you always strike up conversations with them because you get so lonely and isolated.
Oh, I bet.
And I think that after a while, that wears on you.
Do you just tell them, I'm not okay, but I don't need a ride?
Well, yeah, basically.
I mean, I wouldn't be out here if I was okay.
Yeah, I mean, well, it got to a point where, you know, you don't want to stop. But every time I wasn't moving, I felt like I could have done, you know, a 0.1 or 0.2 up the trail. So I never liked to stop for a period of time. And if I ever mentioned to somebody like what I'm doing and where I started and where I'm at now and how many days, then that just leads into so many other questions. And then it's a 15, 20-minute conversation. And I look at 20 minutes on the trail like that was 1 mile I could have done. So I would keep it brief. They'd pull over and say, "Are you okay?" I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm good, thanks, just hiking." And they'd take off. But that's the way you have to approach it.
Just before we move on, just about your pace. So you were averaging 30 upwards to 50. What happened when you hit the snowpack? How was your pace impacted, and how did that impact you physically? Did you find that like you were exhausted by the end of the day, or how was that transition?
Well, so I did from Kennedy Meadows to Mammoth Lakes Trail Junction. That was going to be my first resupply points, 201.1 miles. Last year I did it in 6 days and 5 hours, so I wanted to do better. So this year I did it in 5 days, 8 hours and 30 minutes. Yeah. But to do that through the Sierras, I did 3 passes in 1 day. And then on another day, I ran out of food and I did a 47-mile day through that snowpack to make it to Mammoth Junction. So the snowpack does affect your pace, but I mean, you just don't stop. And a lot of that times you can, glissade down the backs of stuff and slip and fall and slide for 25, 30 feet. And the thing about the Sierras, that snowpack section is, you basically are dealing with the snow about 2 to 3 miles prior to the pass and 2 to 3 miles on the other side of the pass. But once you get past those areas, it basically melts away. And now you're just dealing with some high river crossings because the snow melt is happening pretty bad in that area. What happened in Oregon and Washington was, it wasn't about high mountain passes. It was just they got these huge storms late and this cold spring, cold beginning to the summer. So, we were just walking every day and it felt like it would never end. Like we were pushing, we would get 35s, 37s and that stuff, but you felt like you did a 55, so the difficulty with it was doing a big day like that through those conditions, but then knowing that you're only going to sleep for maybe 5 hours and you're going to wake up and you're going to do that same thing the next day. Yeah. And you just hope that you don't break something or, pull something or tear something, because it's all you're doing so much is just post-holing and tripping and falling and sliding and side-hilling and, making sure you don't fall, 300 feet because so much of the trail is just cut out of the side of the mountain. But when there's that much snow, it's covering all the trail. So you're just basically putting on micro spikes and hiking these sections that in a normal year would probably be okay because you're walking on a flat trail. Yeah. But now you're on a 70-degree pitch and you can't fall because it's 500 feet down to nothing. Yeah. And you're doing this, but you got to try and sustain the pace. Right. And it got very dangerous because we were pushing probably too hard for the equipment we had and where we were. But we were so focused on breaking 200 days that we kind of got complacent and we pushed it, and we had some pretty dangerous situations. We were lucky, very lucky.
And that was my second question, actually, in terms of what you're doing, because listeners are sort of a combination of trail runners, power hikers, traditional hikers, what would you say your style is? Are you running? Are you hiking? Or what are you doing? Power hiking?
Yeah, I'm averaging 16 to 18 hours of hiking a day.
But you're not running or jogging.
No, I'm not. I mean, basically, I'm on the trail probably 2 to 3 hours before an average thru hiker starts their day. Mm-hmm. And when they're pitching their tent at 7 o'clock at night, I'm doing another 10 miles. Yeah. That's the difference in what I'm doing is technique, I'm just doing, just longer days. Just longer days, starting earlier and finishing later. I don't have a problem with night hiking.
Gotcha.
Can you talk about how you select a camp? Like, do you just basically say, I'm done and I'm going to just set up anywhere? Or do you cowboy camp?
Yeah.
Well, how does that work? Do you look for shelters? Or what's the deal with how you manage that?
Yeah, I mean, I pitch my tent. In the desert, I just cowboy. I'm so tired, In fact, I think it was like a week and a half ago. I did a 48-mile day, and I just threw my sleeping pad on the side of the road and just passed out at 1 a.m. because I was too exhausted. But yeah, so I don't ever. I mean, sometimes if it's noontime, and I'll look at the elevation profile, and I'll look ahead, and maybe there's a camp spot or a creek or something that I would like to get to by the end of the day. I'll make that my goal.
Okay.
But if I didn't have one of those, and I'm just going, I just basically will go until I hit my mark. And sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'll hit 35 at 6:30. Sometimes I won't hit 35 until 9:30. But I just would say, well, that's flat enough. Here you go. You can't worry about finding the perfect campsite. I see the sunrises and I see the sunsets, but they're never from a sitting point while I'm cooking my ramen with a jet boil. I'm always moving in those times. So where I camp doesn't really matter too much. I just need to make sure that for the 4 to 5 hours I'm actually going to sleep, I'm going to be somewhat relatively comfortable. But you do those miles, you can sleep on anything. It doesn't matter. So.
Yeah. And on average, like, how long does it take you to set up your camp? Because, like, I know I just did like an overnight with 1 night overnight, and I've done enough of these things, but like, it's a production. Like, I had a hammock, and it's like, I got to set up my hammock, and it takes 15, 20 minutes, but.
Yeah, that's your first mistake. So,
hey, I like to be comfortable.
6 pounds of straps, man. Like, I couldn't even believe that. So, it takes me 5 minutes to set up my tent.
Oh, I use the whoopee one, so it's a little lighter, but still.
Oh, okay, there you go. But yeah, it takes me 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
If it's a hail rainstorm, it's boom, it's quick. In the desert, the ground is so hard. You have issues with trying to hammer those stakes in. So I found a great stake this time because I went through so many last year bending and snapping just because the ground was so hard. So that's basically the one thing that I care about is I can pitch my tent in anything, on anything, as long as I can get the stakes to go into the ground. And it's the worst thing when you...
How about critters?
This time... No, well, actually, I hate spiders, and the tarantulas on the Arizona Trail were massive. I couldn't believe it. So for those 3 days, I stayed inside my tent because I've been stung by a scorpion before, and rattlesnakes were kind of a concern on the Grand Enchantment because you were walking through such high grass, and I'm doing it at night. And I'm listening to music just to get me through it. So I could have heard there would have been a rattle. They could have bit me. I wouldn't even have seen it, So that was an issue. I almost got sprayed by a skunk. Almost walked into a porcupine. The grizzly bears I saw in the Bob Marshall, they were all just taken off when they saw me. Because I don't hang my food. I use my food bag as a pillow. So I didn't hang my food once on this entire hike. I just lay my shit right out and I just sleep right there. I don't think the grizzly bears like me because I'm smoking cigarettes, so they probably hate the smell of cigarettes. I know, it's funny.
That's
half a pack a day.
That's the secret, huh?
That's that average.
Was that just like for stress relief or just whatever?
Oh, I've smoked for 17 years. It's just something I do. So I don't really even think about it.
It's a good friend.
It's funny. There were times where I was hypothermic or soaking wet or cold or whatever the situation was.
Where's my cigarette?
All I had were those cigs. That's all I had were my cigs, man. That's it. And I only had one fire on this hike, and I started that one after a hailstorm on the Grand Enchantment Trail. I only started out of necessity. Everything was soaking wet. I was shaking. It was dropping into the low 40s, high 30s, and I knew it was going to be a miserable, dangerous night if I didn't get a fire going. So, I was able to dry everything from soaking wet to damp. But, what you're doing as a thru hiker is not it's not like an extended weekend hiking trip. You're trying to carry as little weight as possible to accomplish your goal. And your goal is to start at one terminus and finish at the other. And to do that, you have to go without. You have to limit, finding the perfect campsite, having fires all the time, and having all these creature comforts that you could have if you were doing a 5 mile out and back to a lake, and going home the next day. This is not that. So you have to learn to go without a lot of things, and you're going to be uncomfortable because you're going to go without stuff that you wish you had, but you can't plan for every situation. You kind of just have to take the gear that is going to keep you alive, but isn't going to weigh you down and make the hiking miserable. And sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't.
Interesting. So I don't want this to turn into like a therapy session or anything, but I'm curious to understand from your perspective, like you clearly have a high tolerance for, uncomfortable activities, and, you have a very strong will to succeed. Like there has to be something sort of embedded in you. I think that there's a nature-nurture thing here, and I think that, a lot of this is just sort of your natural instincts. But do you think, were you always like this as a kid, like a sort of very headstrong and you could really focus on something, and you were the last guy to quit on any activity, or is this something that developed over time?
I think it developed over time. I think I've always been competitive. And so, that was a big part of what drives me when I'm doing something like this one, But I also, you want to know what these other guys that did it before you, what they went through and what it took to have that mental space and that physical ability, what it was like. And so I wanted to do it as good, if not better than them. And so, I think I've always been competitive. But, if I'm dedicated and committed to something, whether that's, whatever it is, I go all the way. My uncle actually calls me all or nothing boy, because I'm either all or nothing with everything that I do. So, there wasn't going to be a third attempt of this. It was way too long. It's taken, it's been 3 years of my life between planning and doing it. And so I knew that I was going to do it one more time. And I was hoping the trail gods were going to give me a chance, and they did. And it was hard, but you have to only focus on yourself. You can't worry about what's going on with anyone else. And back home, you can't worry about anything but what you have to deal with just that day and that week. Because as soon as you start to daydream and think about, back home and, maybe a relationship you have or whatever it is, and you take yourself away from what you need to do on the trail, that's when the things that start creeping in of, well, I got what I wanted out of it. This wasn't my year. I want to, and then you want to quit. So you got to just focus on every single day, just doing your absolute best. And if you do your best, you're probably going to accomplish what you want to accomplish. Absolutely.
What would you say was the highest point for you? Like, did you have any moments at all where you just like, you met a stray dog that came running up to you, or you had an interaction with somebody where you were like, oh yeah, this is a good day, or was it just all business the whole time?
No, I had a few friends that I saw out there that were doing separate hikes. Some people that I know were on the Continental Divide trail. For me, I think one of the highlights was when I got back to the spot where I broke my foot, because I thought about what I had to do to get back to that point. I had to fail, and I had to work 3 jobs over the winter, and I had to fly back out, and I had to do everything I had already done the year before all over again. So by the time I got to where I broke my foot, and then when I got past Winter Park or Berthoud Pass, where I got off trail, it was like, okay, this is all new now. So I did what I had to do as far as redoing everything. So now we're doing this. So I looked at them as like 2 separate hikes. Had to do the first part over because it has to be done in a calendar year. But I knew once I got to that spot, then it was like, okay, now we've got 2,000 more miles. Our pace is good. Let's try and keep it going. And so that was a big moment. And then I would say the next biggest moment was when I got out of the Grand Canyon, because from there I knew I had 100 miles of forest roads and then 150 or 100 miles or whatever it was of paved roads. So I knew I had it. I knew I was going to break 200 days. I could dictate my distance and mileage when I got on roads. So that was a big moment too. And I don't think it really has hit me what I did. I mean, I think it's still going to take some time. There's like this aha moment. It's like, oh wow, look what you did. I don't think that's going to happen for a little bit. But the lowest points were when my hiking partner Sloppy Joe fell up in the Cascades. He fell 80 feet into a boulder, and if he didn't hit that boulder, he was going to die. He was going to go about 300 feet down to Jacob's Lake. There was nothing I could do. I was just sitting there. I was just standing there. I tried to grab onto him, and the snow he was holding on to broke, and he just went flying. So that was obviously the most scary moment. And then the Grand Enchantment section, the first part of it, and then there's a road walk in the middle, and then the second part of it. Those 2 spots were very difficult because I couldn't do my pace, and when you're down to like days 170 and you're trying to break 200 days and you don't do more than 20 miles in a day, you don't have much time to make that up. So, I lost I lost 70 miles off of my pace on the Grand Enchantment Trail. So when that was all going down and hypothermic and hailstorms and bushwhacking and blowdowns and getting lost and ripping every piece of clothing that you have, I thought, oh man, I've gone this far, and in the last 30 days, I'm going to lose it, and I'm not going to break 200 days. And so those were some low points, absolutely. But, I got to a point on the Arizona Trail where I had there was 4 thunder and lightning storms in one day, which was extremely uncharacteristic for that area in that time of year. I'm like, anything else? What else do you want to throw at me? But, I was ascending up this 6,500 foot mountain, and the darkest clouds and lightning and thunder came behind me, and I had to pitch my tent in this little cove on the side of the mountain, just pitch it just enough to give me a shelter. I actually kicked a cactus when I was doing it. So the storm is going over me. I'm pulling cactus thorns out of my foot, and now I have 2 options. I could either pull out my sleeping bag and just sleep there and say, you know what, forget this sub 200 day thing. I'll just do it whenever I do it and finish whenever I finish. Or I can wait for the lightning to pass, and I can break everything down, and I can get another 5-6 miles in for the day and still be in this thing. And so I waited for an hour, waited for the storm to pass, and I was like, fuck it. And I packed everything up and I just sent it. Then the lightning came again, and the rain and the thunder, and I'm just like going through all this. I'm like, you know what? Take me now. I've gone through so much. If this is how I go down, it's going to make a hell of a story. I don't care. And I ended up getting, 7.5 miles more that day. And then from there, it was the next day, I did, I think it was a 32 because I had to resupply. And then I did a 43, a 42.8, a 34.2, a 40, a 37, a 41.7, a 41.5, and that got me to the Grand Canyon. And then I banged out like a couple of 30-somethings in there, and then that was it. So that was the big turning point, was that moment. But,
incredible.
Nothing ventured, nothing gained, I guess.
And how did your gear change over the course of the hike? I'm assuming like in the start, like you had a plan, like you were going to start with certain gear and then switch up, because once you get to the PCT, it's a little bit different than being in the desert. But can you talk a little bit?
Well, first of all, because I broke my foot, I wasn't fucking around with shoes. I got 13 pairs of the exact same shoe and same color. Yeah. I was not messing around.
13.
Yeah, I know, right? So these were the Ultra Timp 2s. So all the same shoe, all the same color. Didn't even want to think about that one. And then, Nashville pack, they make the best through hiking packs anyway. So they take care of me. This time we used a prototype. They make it now, but mine was the prototype. It's called the Fretless. It was the first one they've used with a detachable waist belt. So we had talked about this big water carry, and their packs don't have waist belts. Now they do. But I needed a waist belt for that water carry just to get that weight off my shoulders. So I used a Nashville pack. I used 2 headlamps to start. Lost one within the first week, and the second one wasn't that great. I don't ever use carbon fiber trekking poles because they break. I want something that's not going to break. I need something that's going to bend. So I always use a Black Diamond Ergo with the corked handle. I use the same tent. Because tents, through hiking in tents, it only matters how many nights that you use them. It's not like matters the distance. So I use the same Z-Packs Ultiplex. This time I went with a full sleeping bag at 10 degrees because last year I went with a 20-degree quilt and absolutely froze in that 3-day snowstorm in the Sierras. So I wasn't going to deal with that. So it was like add like 3 ounces to my base weight getting the sleeping bag, but just know that I was going to be a lot more comfortable. Still went with a torso pad. I don't use a blow-up pad. So I got the Neo, I think, torso pad, the eggshell accordion kind of thing. And then I cut a couple of panels off. So I literally was sleeping on, I used the same one the whole time too. It's like a pancake thick now. It's so thin. And it's literally probably 3.5 feet long. So just from my neck to my knees, and maybe even a little shorter now. And then, I don't use any stuffed sacks because stuffed sacks, what happens with those is you can't get the full shape of your backpack when you use stuffed sacks. So my sleeping bag goes in first, and then my tent goes in after that, and then I'll put my food bag in on top of that, and that pushes everything down, and I got the good shape of the pack now. And so then the biggest change was I went with 2 Nicor 10,000 power banks. So instead of using like one 20,000 that takes 5 hours to charge, I had 2 10,000s, and I could charge those simultaneously and get the same amount of charge in half the time. And so this is where I was really able to streamline my resupply points. I went from like 4 to 5 hours to 3 hours. So I was able to do more miles on those days. I don't use wireless earbuds because that's just another thing you got to charge. I went through 3 phones. My first phone died in a storm near Crater Lake. My second storm died in a rainstorm near Leavenworth, Washington. So I went through 3 phones on the hike. Yeah, man, that was tough because you got to re-download all the maps. You had all this music or whatever, so that's a pain in the tail. So I had to do that 3 times. And I don't have a stove. I cold soak. So basically, by 3-4 in the afternoon, I would I'd have like a 1 gallon bag of ramen noodles, and I would just take an empty jar, Talante jar, or whatever, scoop, add water, add some seasoning, shake it up, stick it in my pack, and then just hike the rest of the day. I didn't like to eat when I got to camp, and I didn't want to do a stove because last year I was taking a half hour at the end of my days just to cook. And all I want to do when I get to camp is sleep. So a lot of times, if I noticed that the trail was not flat, but fairly decent, I would just eat as I walked. And so much of the Nashville pack with all of its pockets allow you to eat as you're hiking. So you just have pockets at your disposal and you're just grabbing stuff. And when you're trying to do something like this, you don't want to stop a lot. You're not taking big 3, hour-long breaks. It was a couple of 15s, a couple of 20s, and usually that would accumulate into an hour and a half to 2 hours throughout the day. And so if I could continue to move, I would. My base weight, because I had a GoPro, so I filmed this, and you have cords and all the charging block and all that stuff that you need. So I would say my base weight was probably 10, 11 pounds. My pack was 33 liter.
So I got a couple of questions. The sleeping bag, keeping that dry, did you have like a compactor bag or something you'd put it in, or did you rely on the Nashville pack, just the Dyneema to keep it dry?
Well, nothing is ever waterproof. No matter what you ever buy for hiking, it's all bullshit. I mean, unless you're hiking with a wetsuit, nothing's going to keep you dry. And if it rains hard enough, whether it's a trash compactor bag and a pack liner and a pack cover, and it rains hard enough, everything's still going to get wet. So, I would just do the trash compactor bag and put my sleeping bag in there. And there were times where the thing was soaking wet, and you're already soaking wet, so you're already wearing your rain gear. So then I would just sleep with all my rain gear on and hope like the following day the sun would come out and I could lay everything out for, half hour or even an hour sometimes and just get it all dry. The toughest days are when, you're soaking wet and you go to bed, everything's wet, and then you wake up the next day and then you hike all day knowing that the sun never came out, it never got warm enough, and all that stuff that was soaking wet last night is still going to be soaking wet tonight. And you deal with that for 2 or 3 days, and that really wears on you. So, yeah.
So you're not carrying like a dry bag, as they call them?
Well, my electronics.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Electronics, but at some point
But not for clothing.
No, I just stuff my clothing like in my pack because I have this pet peeve where I want my pack to be very like square and like its shape. So I don't like it to be like this awkward, stupid, like flopping over thing. So yeah, I would just stuff all my shit in there. I went through 17, 18 pairs of socks on this, and I would always wear a Injinji 5-toed liner sock, and then I would wear a Darn Tough lightweight, and that would keep friction from happening, and it keeps your toes splayed out because after a while they start to want to step on each other. So that sock combination worked perfectly. And when one pair of socks was wet, I just tied them on the back of my pack and just go into stores with these nasty, sticky socks, and you're walking down the aisle and people are like, who is this knucklehead? Because you got to remember, the AT and the PCT, people know what those are that live around it. But so much of the loop is on these other obscure things where people don't even know there's a trail. So when you look like me walking into a store, they don't initially go, oh, well, that's a thru hiker. They're going like, yeah, like, let's get the hell out of here. And they're looking at you with one eye, and then you go down their aisle, and then they like casually walk around, and they're like thinking you're like some vagrant homeless guy, So, and you're completely.
You know what you are? You're the guy. When they have those urban rumors where like someone will be like, I almost got abducted at Target or Walmart. Like you're the guy that they're confused about.
People are inherently nice, and when you're out doing this stuff, you find that everyone that can help you is going to try and help you. But when you look the way I do, you smell the way I do, I have to always remind myself that what I'm doing is not really normal. And there's a very small group of people that do these hikes. I mean, this country has 350 million people, and in a given year, you probably have 30,000 thru hikers. So the numbers are super small. So, when someone sees me in a store when I'm in, wherever, Arizona, they're not going to go, oh, that's a thru hiker. They're going to go, oh, poor homeless guy. Wonder what led his life to get to this point,
I got a comment on the Outside Magazine picture. They used that picture you gave him. Probably, I don't know. You look pretty wild.
Yeah. Yeah, did the article come out? I didn't even know. I saw it a couple days ago. It's like, cool. Right on. Super cool. Oh yeah. One thing was your mustache starts to grow over your lip. And so when you're trying to eat this food, you're always pulling it out of the sides, and it becomes really annoying. I mean, it's keeping you warm, and it's what hikers do. They grow a beard or whatever. But I mean, when I got home, I was like, okay, this thing needs to go. I'm glad I earned it, and I'm glad I have it, but it's got to go. And then one day, close to the end, my Snickers bar was frozen. So I was trying to grab it and break it off, but I grabbed half of my beard and ripped 10 hairs out. So it was by that point, it's okay. I mean, this thing's got to go. This hair's got to be cut. And but yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things.
So amazing. I got two more questions. One is, first of all, I want to know whether or not your feet got bigger, and when you bought the shoes, did they not fit because your feet got bigger? Or I forget how that works. But then the other thing is, you wear glasses. So how did you manage the logistics? Because I wear contact lenses and glasses, and the short overnights that I do, it's always a pain in the ass to deal with.
I just didn't bring them. I mean, I'm nearsighted, so at night hiking, if my headlamp was dying, so I just use a USB. And it starts, slowly get dimmer as the battery, goes down. So I would have trouble seeing sometimes at night, but it's not to the point where I have to really wear them to see. So I don't even wear contacts. I'm either wearing these or I'm not. So that wasn't an issue.
Okay. The feet, did your feet change at all over the course of 7,000 miles?
Yeah, I think they did get slightly wider. So I told you about that Injinji sock and my sock combination, the two socks. When I would get my shoes, I wouldn't be able to wear both pairs of socks for the first 3 days. I needed to break those shoes in a little bit, and then I could go back to that combination. So I wore every pair of shoes for a week, 5 days to a week before I left for the hike, so I could at least get them a little bit broken in. And then I would just take them off and put them in the box and grab a new pair and wear them to work and do stuff with them. But, when I started hiking, I was a 10, and now I'm a 12. And if it's not a wide enough shoe, I have to go with a 12 and a half. So Ultra makes a wide toe box, Hoka makes a wide toe box, and they make a wide. Topo's the new good through hiking shoe that you're seeing all of the hikers in the know are transferring over to Topos because Ultra's been bought out and their sizing's all different now and stuff. So Topo is a good shoe, but it's 1 millimeter too narrow for me. So I would have to break them in, and then I would have to pull a liner out and hike without the liner because it was so uncomfortable. Because there was one time in Glacier, my box didn't arrive, and I wasn't I could just, drive down to the local store and buy a new pair of shoes. So I ended up doing 940 miles on one pair of Ultras through Glacier, and those were completely blown out. And I ended up having no choice but to buy some Topos in Helena, which felt good in the store. But, you bang out 35-mile, 40-mile day, and man, you're in some pain. And that's the thing, man. If you don't find a good pair of shoes Once you find the right shoe for you, you should just buy like 10 pairs, because if your feet aren't happy, you're not happy. It doesn't matter, anything. If your feet are beat up and blistered and you're too small or too big or whatever it is, I mean, nothing's going to be enjoyable out there. So that's one thing I always remembered is once I find one pair of shoes, I just buy like 10 pairs. I'm going to use them, but they're always changing and they're always hard to find. So, yeah.
All right. And then just in your personal opinion, in this big circle that you went through, what would you say was the top scenic area that stood out to you? Was it Glacier or was it some other area?
I mean, there's so many. The Grand Canyon is the coolest visual section of desert hiking I've ever done. So we break it down into environments. The Grand Canyon has it for the desert. For mountain sections, it's the John Muir Trail in the Sierras. I always tell people it's like walking through a Bob Ross painting. It's incredible. Glacier was really rad too. Yellowstone, that section of the CDT, they kind of keep you over. You go through, Old Faithful Village, but they keep you over on the western side of Yellowstone, which isn't as beautiful as the eastern side, which I did last year. The San Juans are great too, but they get windy. And there was a night where I pitched my tent and it was whipping about 60 probably. And at 1 a.m, the wind snapped my trekking pole right in half and my tent collapsed right on top of me. And wow. I thought I could ride it out. At first I was like, it's 1 a.m. Let me just sleep till I got like 3 more hours. I got to get up anyway. But it was so loud. It was like being inside a paper bag. And so I had to break everything down at 1:30 in the morning and 70-mile-an-hour winds, make sure nothing flies away, and just hike another 2 miles and burrow myself like in this like section of trees that was another 500 feet down. But the San Juans were awesome. The hail and the lightning and stuff. That was sketchy, but it's a really incredible hard section. It's hard because to compare it to the Sierras are relatively flat until you do the passes, and then you have to go up and over the passes, and then you go down and it's flat for a number of miles until you get to your next pass. With the San Juans, it was literally like 2 to 3 miles of slow climbs up, and then 2 to 3 miles of slow climbs down. And in the middle of those mountains, you literally have maybe, if you were lucky, a mile of flat. So you're always going up or you're always going down in the San Juans. And that's what makes them so hard. But yeah, Cascades were beautiful too. There was so much snow. We broke trail through the Goat Rock Wilderness and the Knife's Edge. We both fell on the Knife's Edge, but we were able to stop ourselves. Because that would have been bad because that was like 1,000 feet to a glacier or whatever. Sloppy Joe, the other kid, he fell there too, but when he fell backwards, his foot got hooked in the hole that he fell through.
Wow.
So it held him from tumbling down into the abyss. So we were able to do that section, which was beautiful. Mount Rainier Wilderness was completely covered in snowpack. I think I sent you guys a picture of that section, and it was just all covered in snow, and it was just a gray, rainy, shitty couple of days. And then, north of that, the Cascades, we tried to do the section from Snoqualmie to Stevens Pass, but because of that fall that he had, we had to turn around and we had to reassess and reevaluate what we were doing out there. And basically, I said, look, let's just do the PCT carefully until we get out of the snow, because we're doing this stuff at a pace where we should be having helmets and 2 ice axes, not 1 mountaineering axe. We should have crampons, not micro spikes. We should have screws. We should have ropes. We didn't have any of that stuff. We got micro spikes, trail running shorts, and, we're just trying to blast through this stuff. And it was after that fall that we kind of changed our approach. And we decided to take an alternate route around that section. Shouldn't have been up there anyway. It was way too dangerous. And from there, we just started to do what we could do. And then if it was stuff that was too dangerous, we had to avoid it. So we weren't able to do Glacier Peak. There was too much avalanche danger. There was flood watch warnings, and we knew that Kennedy Creek's bridge had been washed out. So we couldn't do that. The Three Sisters Mountains, couldn't do that. People were going to do it, but they were all ice climbing, mountaineering up, So we went around that one. We knocked out Thielsen. We knocked out around Adams. We did the Goat Rocks. We did the Knife's Edge, and we were able to do most of the good peaks. We actually went right across Mount Hood. They were still skiing around us as we were walking the trail. And we got to hit that, all-you-can-eat breakfast buffet, which is pretty epic. It was amazing to we're hiking this trail that they're skiing on still. And it was this one year, I think, someone that was there said it was the first time in 30 years they were going to be open through August because they got that much snow. And I thought, wow, picked a hell of a year to do this loop and be up here. Because this was, we finished the PCT on July 9th. And they couldn't even, people that wanted southbound the PCT couldn't even start at the northern terminus. There was too much snow. So people were starting about 500 miles south of that and starting their hike there. The access road, Harts Pass, was closed. This was July 9th, and there was so much snow still. They couldn't even start on the border of Canada. It's crazy.
Wow. No, can you talk about the injury? So just going towards the end of it, and by the way, the Grand Enchantment, that's the shittiest description for the section of trail, that based on what you're telling me, the name of that trail should be the Shitty Enchantment or something but you started picking up some injuries, right?
Well, I started thinking of what I would call that trail, and Grand Enchantment was definitely not the word I was going to use. It just, bushwhacking through any environment's hard.
Yeah.
But bushwhacking through the desert's even harder because everything is sharp. Everything is formidable. Everything is trying so hard to survive because they don't have a lot of water. So you're going through these brambles. You're getting cut and scratched and just so beat up. But I think it was probably right around the start of the Grand Enchantment where the cortisone shots that I had in my knees and my shoulders started to wear out. And so now it was okay, I knew it was going to wear out eventually. I'm actually happy it lasted as long as it did. But yeah, so now you're still trying to push this pace. But, now you've got a shoulder that's bothering you. You've got both knees that are bothering you. And the knee pain is when I was going up or down hills. So you're doing a lot of that. So that was tough. But come on, I'd gone so long and so hard. I wasn't going to lose it, in the next 30 days or whatever. So, you just do what you have to do. So basically, at one point, wherever I was, I went to a dispensary and I got some edibles, and that helped me for a little bit because they were CBD infused edibles.
Yeah.
So I remember being on top of Gray's Peak, and I took 2 edibles, 2 caffeine pills, and walked off the top of that one smoking a cigarette. And this guy was like, "How's your head feeling right now?" I'm like, man, it's like doing a whippet. That just kept going. And I didn't even realize I had no more. I was down to half a liter of water, and I chose to do the Argentine spine, which is a much more difficult section of the CDT. So now I've got cotton mouth and I've got no water, and I've got to do this 8-mile technical section up and over this Knife's Edge. But, my knees didn't hurt too bad at that point, so that was okay.
And when you did get to the finish, did you have anybody meeting you there? Was like, how did you wrap it up?
My biggest sponsor, Takeo Comfort Solutions. So they financially helped with a significant part of this hike. And they were supposed to meet me out on the trail and do some filming. They wanted me to meet some of their upper crusty people. But the timing never worked out. And then with the snowpack, I just couldn't figure it out. And I didn't want to deal with, having a stop and chat for a couple hours when I was so focused on what I needed to do. So they kept saying they were going to meet me. And I kept saying, well, we'll see about that. And they never did. And then like 3 or 4 days before the end, I talked to their chief marketing exec. And he was like, okay, I promise we're sending somebody to the end to meet you. I said, well, okay, but if you show up or one of your guys shows up, you better bring me a bottle of Dom. This was the Great Western Loop. I swear to God, if you show up with a bottle of Corbel, get back in your car and get the hell out of here. So
the concert rider. Red M&Ms.
Yo, man. And so, dude, oh yeah, that's right. No brown M&Ms. So it's a good one. That's good. So when I got 5 minutes before the end, like I could see the sign, and sure enough, man, this like brand new black Jeep Grand Cherokee pulls into the parking lot, and some dude I don't even know just pops out with a takeout shirt on and starts filming me. And so I basically was like, well, this is kind of weird. So I just like walked up to him, and I think I just like gave him like a fist pump because I hadn't touched the sign yet. I wasn't done. So I'm like, I gotta keep going. So I went over to the sign, I tagged it, walked back over to the car. He showed me the bottle of Dom that he went to 4 different liquor stores to find. It still had the price tag. I think it was $290. And
nice.
We had some little plastic champagne flutes, and he's not a big drinker. He said he only drinks beer. So he had a toast with me, and then now the bottle's open. I'm not going to let that thing go to waste.
So be honest, was it just like a Corbel? It's all branding.
It totally is. It totally is. I just wanted to see if they were actually going to do it, and then they actually did. So it was awesome. And then they gave me a ride to Vegas. They put me up at a casino on the Strip, and they took me out to dinner on the company. And I got a $190 tomahawk ribeye steak on them.
Mike, and, you might have crossed paths with him. You were just out there.
I was.
I know. I didn't even think about that. I was just out there a couple of weeks ago.
I was at Henderson Steakhouse. I don't know. It was great.
Ooh, nice.
And then, so that was it. I mean, the only person at the end was this one guy I didn't even know. It was really funny.
Pretty epic.
There wasn't really anyone. There was no one in nothing. And because a lot of people will say they're going to meet you. We want to be there. But, people have their own lives to live, and that's hard. And it was weird because I could actually, you don't know how it's going to feel when it's over, because it's been something that it never felt like it would end. It's so long. And I had that injury last year, and I planned for so long that I never prepared for that. I kind of just felt like I was just going to walk for the rest of my life. So then when I finally saw that sign and I was finally about to complete this thing, I was kind of in shock. I didn't know what I was going to do. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to think, oh my God, I can't believe I did it. None of that stuff. So you see people at the end of these hikes, and they're like, oh my God. Yeah. Oh, jeez. So basically I tagged the sign, and then he was like, oh, can you say hi to, all the people in New York? And so they had a big dinner over in New York for me, and they were all cheering and everything. But it was literally 3 minutes after I had just tagged the sign. Like I hadn't processed anything, And I didn't know what to say, and I was just kind of in shock. So, it was it was a nice drive back to Vegas with a bottle of Dom and then a $200 steak. I think the tab was $500, but the guy with me had 2 beers and a chicken thing. So the rest of it was all me, baby.
Aww.
Yeah, it was worth it. And
that's pretty cool, man.
Yeah.
You deserve it. That's cool.
Yeah, I did it good. And then the next day flew to Miami, took a day and a half just to, hang out on the beach and put my feet in the sand. And then, from there I flew home. So, and then 2 days after that I had knee surgery.
Oh.
And a week later, here we are.
Now tell us about that a little bit, if you don't mind. About the surgery.
The knee surgery?
Yeah.
Well, I did. Yeah. So I did I had the MRI done in January before I left.
Yeah.
And so the plan was to do cortisone shots in each knee and in my shoulder. And we'll hope the quads get strong enough to support, what I'm going to put my knees through. And that game plan seemed to work. So when I was on the trail, I booked the appointment. I think I was walking. I was on a road walk where I actually had reception. So I called and they were able to fit me in on November 9th. So when I had the surgery, they were hoping that I didn't do any more damage, but they basically thought that I had probably completely torn my meniscus. So whatever was left still attached before I left for the hike was certainly going to be completely gone by the time.
I can't believe you pulled that off, dude. Yeah, I can't imagine.
It's kind of crazy.
Full-blown meniscal destruction, and you're out there just crushing 40 miles a day. Yeah.
I mean, the hardest part, the most pain was the pavement road walks.
Yep.
That was what hurt because I was stepping.
That's how it was for me.
Yeah, because you're stepping.
My hip replacement.
Oh yeah,
no doubt about it. I was most comfortable on ascents or descents, but you get me on a flat road, miserable.
Yeah, that was what it was, and but you're so close to the end by that point. So this morning I had my post-op, and they said, what's crazy is when we got in there, your meniscus wasn't any more torn than it was when you did the MRI back in January.
Wow.
So in a crazy way, you just did this hike and you didn't tear any more of it than what you had already torn.
Interesting.
Which I couldn't believe because you think about all the times you trip and fall and slip. And
it's got to be those hiking poles.
Yeah. It could have been those ergos, man. Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Wow.
Who knows? So this one got done.
So Chezwick, is this
the end?
Is this the end? Like this is the pin in the accomplishments, or do you think there's anything in the future for these long
there's
distance
nothing.
hikes again?
There's no continuous footpath that's an actual hiking trail that's longer than the loop, right? So to do it in 197 days or whatever I did it in, and to do the longest one that way, like I'm not going to try and top that. There's
Nationally.
no way for me to top it, and I'm okay. I'm okay with that, right? I'm cool with that. So the Hayduke Trail is a route. So that's Utah, and I haven't done any hiking in Utah, and I hear it's beautiful. So next year with a buddy of mine, we're gonna link the Hayduke and the low to high route, which goes from Death Valley to Mount Whitney, and the Hayduke's 800. I found some trails in between, I think about 50 miles that can bring me to Death Valley. And then from there get to Mount Whitney. So it's about 1,000 miles. But, I've got this knee surgery, and then in the spring I have to do my other knee. So the best I can do is, knock out something that's 1,000 miles in the fall. But I need to take it easy for a little bit. I mean, you only have so much time where your body can handle this kind of stuff, and to do, I just did under 12,000 miles in 18 months. So, I'm now that I've slowed down, I'm starting to feel the pain from all of that. So I think it's going to be something next year, but the calendar year Triple Crown, that sounds intriguing. The PCT, Yo-Yo FKT, that seems like there's a lot of meat on the bone there. I think it's like 180 days or something. So there'll probably be one more big one, but after that, I don't think my body will be able to handle it anymore.
How old are you?
37.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So Skirka was 26 when he did it. Garmeyer, I think, turned 28 on the trail. So,
Wow. That's awesome.
Never too old to do a hike, but
Sure.
to do this one, 37's basically pushing it. And, knowing that I need 2 knees, surgeries, and I do need a shoulder surgery too, but I think my knees are more important right now. So, yeah, anyone can do all those hikes, the AT, PCT, CDT, but to do this one in a calendar year, you probably don't want to be any older than probably 35. But my buddy Fish did his version of the loop last year, and he was 49 when he did it. And he tore his ACL in the Sierras, and he still hiked all the way around and then got into western Colorado and finished that way. Because he had already done the Grand Enchantment Trail. He knew how much of a nightmare it was. So he skipped that in his loop last year. Very smart, very smart. But, he was 49. So I met him on the trail and I was like, okay, I'm the oldest and you're the fastest. That was pretty cool.
Interesting. So any plugs, any donations, anything like, do you need money? Do we need to pay you? Like, what's going on?
You do. Yeah. Hook me up. So, yeah, let's go. So we were able to raise enough money. I think we get 455 people access to clean drinking water for life. So that was big. So Chris Long Foundation, okay. They were able to make that happen. So my website was basically just a way to get people to go to their website to donate to do that. So that was wonderful. I actually need to thank you guys, because after I had the podcast with you last time, 2 days later, EMS, Eastern Mountain Sports, got a hold of me, and they said, great. Make us a wish list, because we heard you on the podcast. Because I think I said something about I'm not big on social media, so I didn't get some sponsorships because of that. And they were like, you know what, we respect what you're doing, the challenge of what you're doing, and we just want to help you any way that we can. So they told me to make a wish list, and I did, and they sent me everything I asked for, except for the $600 Garmin. The $600 Garmin watch I tried to sneak into that wish list, and they couldn't get me that, but I had to try, right? Nice. So yeah, EMS.
Oh, EMS has been awesome.
Yeah, they hooked me up, and then North Country Chiropractor, they hooked me up, or Coos County Chiropractor, and Nashville PAX, obviously. And, my buddy Dallas Ransom Multimedia, he built the site and he kept it going, and he uploaded the pictures. He would be in touch with all these companies. And then, he was like, you need to have a team around you to do this. I couldn't have done it without a number of people. And Dallas was like my go-to guy for logistics and stuff going forward on the trail. So I met him with 10 trail miles, and now I've got over 18,000. So, he was a huge help, him and his wife, Myra. And then obviously Takeo Comfort Solutions. Not a lot of people get paid to do these things. You get free gear, and, you get sponsorships of shoes and whatnot, but they literally gave me a significant amount of money just to let me go do this. And that was really awesome. And they didn't want too much. I had to hold a banner at the end and, do a few other things and do some, probably some meet and greets and whatever. But, so yeah, all those companies were great, and I was happy to have them. I was lucky to have them, and I probably wouldn't have been able to do it without them. So, it was awesome that they allowed me to just do the hike the way I wanted to do it. I didn't feel like I had to compromise. I didn't have to incessantly post on Instagram, and I didn't have to do all of these Facebook things. I just did it the way that I would do it, and they were okay with that. And that's the thing, is you have to do it your way. And if you feel like you're compromising for notoriety or for social media followers, this is not a hike that's going to allow for that kind of bullshit. You need to focus on what you need to do every single day, and you need to do your best. And and I was able to do that, and I feel very lucky, absolutely very lucky.
Yeah, and Stomp, he's a real man. He didn't cry at the end. He ate a big giant steak. Not like you cry. Stomp cried when he finished his 4,000 footers.
That's why you laugh so hard when I said
a little bit of perspective.
And he had tofu instead of steak, so he's not like you, Chezwick.
I'm just a boy. You're a real man. Holy shit. This is so inspiring, man. But just know, we're like providing you this free service here on the podcast to like cathartically get through this whole adventure that you're still trying to process. So you're going to get our psychology bill.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
No, the one thing that I think bothers me, Chezwick, is that like you're one of the more prolific like long distance hikers in the area, but like I feel like you don't vibe that much with New Hampshire. Like I know you've done a lot of hiking around here, but like you don't get jazzed up with like the White Mountain hiking stuff like we do.
Right. Like I did.
He grew up
What
here.
can we do to change your mind?
Well, I did like the 4,000 footers just to train, So I was just like, okay. Like I don't count, like when I say I have, over 18,000 trail miles, those are just my long distance hikes. I don't count, the red lines and the 4,000 footers. I don't even know, what that is, but I love all these hikes around here. But yeah, it's weird. I don't do.
It's a bigger world.
If I'm not training, getting ready for one of the big ones, I'm not doing too much hiking. And that's probably because I spend, half the year out in the woods, that I kind of don't want to do it too much when I'm home. And then also half the time when I'm home, I'm recovering from an injury, I mean, I had a broken foot last year. I had a broken leg right before the PCT. I had a broken shoulder for 7 years when I did the ECT. So, I have all these surgeries that I always have to do. And then in the meantime, I'm either working to save up for this next adventure that I'm doing. So, I like it. I like to knock out all the hikes, and I do. I mean, you guys ever hike Pine Mountain in New Hampshire?
Yeah.
Pine Mountain?
I love Pine.
It's over in Gorham.
No.
Yeah. You haven't done Pine Mountain? That's a good one.
Yeah, it's a great...
You can actually go from there.
It's that little chapel thing there.
Yeah. It's that Jesus Freak camp's like right down the street or whatever. But like you can do from that parking lot in Gorham, you can literally get to the top of Mount Washington through there. So I like to do I
know where it is.
Yeah. So if I'm doing hikes, I like to do like these really obscure ones that don't get used a lot, that aren't like the popular ones, because so many of our trails are great, but if you're doing Mount Washington in August, you're dealing with people from down south, and so I'm always doing some stuff that's more obscure and kind of in the middle of nowhere. And it's amazing, our trail system. It's so vast for the size of our state. How many trails we have? It's absolutely insane. I mean, I don't know, maybe this summer we can go out and we can knock out a 4,000 footer if you wanted to.
Yeah. We'll
just let me know.
We'll get you out there before your next big long hike or something. But Chezwick, we want to thank you so much for coming on. Like, I think that this is probably, I think what you did is one of the most significant accomplishments within hiking that I can imagine. And I think even just athletic endeavors in general, you hear about ultra runners and you hear about people that do these marathons and all this stuff. And I think the amount of sort of intestinal fortitude and focus and drive that it takes to do something like this, I don't think people realize. I think a lot of people that are involved in the hiking will realize it, but I don't think the general public realizes just how amazing an accomplishment this was for you to complete this. I mean, it's incredibly impressive, and we're very honored that you would sit down with us and listen to our dumb questions.
Thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. No, those questions are pretty good. I like those questions. You guys are good interviewers.
Yeah, I think it takes a little more than intestinal fortitude. It might be testicular fortitude.
Yeah. Man. It's like it's a wiring thing for sure.
Unless you're eating ramen for like 200 days straight, then it might be intestinal.
I'm telling you, there's like some foods now that I can't even go close to. I can't do peanut butter. I can't do ramen.
I bet.
I can't do Pop-Tarts. Like all that stuff, like when I'm home, I don't eat it at all. I'm so done with it. And then another thing I was really lucky was I didn't have to deal with a single fire closure on the entire hike, which is amazing out west.
That's great.
Because
there's
Sequoia,
a lot.
Sequoia got shut down. Northern Cali, Sayed Valley, they would put people in Ashland, Oregon for a while. So the whole West Coast got on fire again. And CDT I lucked out on. I didn't have to deal with any fires. There was one, I think, in Salmon, Idaho. So that one thing, not having to deal with fires, was very lucky for me. Because if you want to hike out west, fires are going to be one thing that you're going to have to deal with. And it was amazing that I didn't. So... Yeah, that was one thing awesome. The trail gods hooked me up with. I do really appreciate that one. So, yeah, I'm happy. I'm glad I did it, and can set my life bar up pretty high now, and I'm happy and I'm content. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, the hardest thing I ever will do, and as hard as it was absolutely 100% worth it. But I don't know if I could do it again. It took everything I had and then some. It took all my money. It took everything. And by the end, it was kind of like, okay, I'm ready for this to be over, because it's almost so much gas you have in the tank, and by that time, man, I was running on empty for sure, and I was ready for it to be finished. So,
well, I know you're still kind of processing it, but again, we appreciate you coming on, and we're going to get this pushed out, and I think you'll probably be able to hear it tomorrow, I think, as it's coming out. So thank you so much again, Chezwick. And
absolutely.
Stomp, anything else before we wrap up?
No, man. I think we covered a lot of ground, and I hope to see you on the snowmobile trails this season, Chez.
Yeah, man. I'm looking forward to it. Oh, absolutely. It'd be great.
Yeah, you keep me posted, okay?
I will.
To get some of these listeners out there. Good.
Yeah, definitely. Well, hey, guys. Yeah, thanks for having me. Take care.
All right, that's a wrap.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to learn more about the topics covered in today's show, please check out the show notes and safety information at SLASRpodcast.com. That's SLASR podcast.com. You can also follow the show on Facebook and Instagram. We hope you'll join us next week for another great show. Until then, on behalf of Mike and Stomp, get out there and crush some mega peaks.
Now covered in scratches, blisters, and bug bites, Chris Staff wanted to complete his most challenging day hike ever.
Fish and Game officers say the hiker from Florida activated an emergency beacon yesterday morning. He was hiking along the Appalachian Trail when the weather started to
common mistakes you see people make when they're heading out on the trails to hike here in New Hampshire?
It seems to me the most common is being unprepared. I think if they just simply visited hikesafe.com and got a list of the 10 essential items and had those in their packs, they probably would have no need to ever call us at all.